Do you know what it is, right? You go away for a couple of days and you think it's the international break, not too much can happen, and then all of a sudden you start reading stories that Pep Guardiola wants Cole Palmer back at Manchester City. Real Madrid are now in for an academy graduate from Chelsea Football Club. Tommy Tuchel has become the manager of the England national team, and our club captain, Rees James, is back in full first team training. So off the back of all that news, now that I am back from covering the boxing out in Saudi Arabia, what better time to sit down and to go over all of the gossip flying around and just to have a general chat with you lot, because you know that I've missed you. But before we get into all that, people, welcome back to the Joey Knight podcast. If you are not already, please do me a massive favour, hit the subscribe button. I was asking all of you to subscribe. You all were subscribing, which I was truly grateful for. But now I'm having a little look at the analytics, and over half of you that are watching this video are not subscribed to the channel right now. So if you're watching it, you're probably watching it because you like it. And if you do like it, please do me a massive favour and help the channel out by subscribing. And while you're doing me favours, hit the like button right now. Let's get into it. So I'm going to read this out for you right now. And reports this week suggest that Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola has apparently asked the club to deliver the transfer of Chelsea star Cole Palmer as an ideal replacement for Kevin De Bruyne. So Pep wants Palmer, does he? Oh yeah, that's nice. I want 11-inch mate. Not gonna happen. And do you know what? I'm pretty much pouring cold water on this one before we even delve into it. But Pep had his chance with Palmer and he fucked it, didn't he? Being that Pep is an elite manager who you would imagine has an exceptional eye for talent, how on earth did he manage to let Cole Palmer slip through his palms? And how on earth did Manchester City manage to sell him to us for 40 million, less than we bought Axel Disasi for? Oh my god, you gotta laugh, ain't ya? And the fact that you're speaking about Cole Palmer as potentially being a Kevin De Bruyne replacement is literally laughable. I mean, talk about trying to dance around the issue without addressing it, because me and you both know that if Cole Palmer was to go to Manchester City, he wouldn't be going there to replace Kevin De Bruyne. He would be going there to replace Phil Foden, the player that Manchester City, Pep Guardiola and the board and whoever else calls the shots over there deemed more ready for the here and now, and a better player, let's be honest, than Cole Palmer. The player that won player of the season last year over Cole Palmer. And I'm not even digging it out. Phil Foden had a great season last season, didn't he? 27 goal involvements in 35 league games. That's pretty hard to top. Could anyone even... Hold on. Cole Palmer's just asked me to hold his beer. Cole Palmer, 33 goal involvements in 33 league games last season. And by the way, he did that in a Chelsea team that finished 6th and lost 11 games last season, whereas Phil Foden did it in a Manchester City team that finished 1st and lost just 3 league games last season. So I openly admit that Cole Palmer was playing at a lower level last season than Phil Foden, and he was playing in a team that were hardly pulling up trees in comparison to the team that Phil Foden was playing in last season. But let's have a look at when they're taken out of their club sides. Let's have a look how Phil Foden fares when he is put in somewhat of a lesser side. For example, like the England international team, because let's be honest, he's hardly a difference maker there, is he? You've only got to rewind to Euro 2024 if you need the evidence, because Phil Foden started 7 games in that competition. 0 goals, 0 assists. Now, Cole Palmer was involved in 5 games, not one of which was a start. By the way, 1 goal, 1 assist. The assist being a beauty of a ball that he put through to Ollie Watkins that helped win us the match and get us through to the final, and then he doesn't even get to start in the final. Absolutely ludicrous. He'd be within his own rights to be throwing his toys out the pram, but he didn't throw his toys out the pram. He threw the ball into the back of the net with a lovely left-footed finish when he came on in the final, and nearly, by hook or by crook, helped England win that final. So in a nutshell, you could say Yeah, you could say that Cole Palmer managed to do more in 143 minutes at Euro 2024 than Phil Foden managed to do in 622 minutes at Euro 2024. But hold on, you're probably thinking, wait, why are we comparing Cole Palmer to Phil Foden when the article very, very clearly said that Pep could see Cole Palmer as a Kevin De Bruyne replacement? Well, let's have a little look at the heat map, shall we? Because here's Kevin De Bruyne's heat map so far this season, whereas here is Cole Palmer's heat map alongside Phil Foden's so far this season. Now, I know to me which heat maps look more similar. See, last season, Pep Guardiola had the option to be ruthless and start giving Cole Palmer minutes ahead of Phil Foden, and he didn't opt to do that, even after seeing in both the Community Shield and the Super Cup that Cole Palmer was definitely ready for the here and now. And what did he do? He sold him when Cole Palmer stated to Pep Guardiola that he wanted more game time. So, in a nutshell, Pep Guardiola didn't believe in him. And that's fine, by the way. It worked out well for you. You ended up winning the league. But don't come running back now, mate. Don't come running back now. Because that is like me dumping a bird and then all of a sudden she unexpectedly goes out, gets a tan, loses some weight, gets in great shape, wins the lottery, is all of a sudden every single man's desire. And then I make a U-turn and decide I really want to be with her. No thanks. Too little, too late. I'm sorry, Pep, but Cole's ours, mate. And he signed down on a 42-year contract, by the way. So the closest you're going to get to Cole Palmer now is when he rocks up to the Etihad this season and bangs in a hat-trick while Chelsea beat Manchester City. All right. A little bit far maybe, but I had to get that one off my chest because fake news or not, it really, really rattled me. Anyway, speaking of players who may or may not be on the move, there is a news report this week that Carlo Ancelotti's Real Madrid are interested in Chelsea academy product Josh Achampong. And I've got to be honest, this story's pretty random, isn't it? He hasn't played much this season at all, really, and I don't want to jump to conclusions here. But my gut instinct would tell me that Carlo Ancelotti wasn't keeping a keen eye on Chelsea's cup match against Barrow this season when Achampong did have a decent run out. Now, I quite like Achampong, and you lot know that I've always got a soft spot for academy graduates, which is why I would rather that we didn't sell him. Like, I mean, if they wanted... How about the Sassy? You can have the Sassy. I wouldn't even charge more than what we paid. You could have him for a nice, cool 45 million if you fancied the Sassy. No, in all seriousness, no. With the options that we've got, with obviously the young, talented Malo Gusto there, club captain Rees James there, then if this story wasn't a massively clickbaity story, then I actually could see this one happening if Real Madrid wanted him. Now, I said the name there, Rees James, and Rees James is now back in full first team training. And many people are asking the question, when are we going to see Rees James back in the Chelsea team? And for me, this is a really delicate one, isn't it? Because the quicker we rush Rees James back, the more chance he has of suffering yet another injury setback. And that's definitely not what we want. But also, you got to look at this Liverpool game coming up, and you got to feel like we are going to be a little bit weakened defensively, because we saw the fact that Fofana picked up a yellow card in the last match, Cucurella picked up a yellow card in the last match, and that means that neither of those will be available for selection in the Liverpool game. So when you look at that defensive line, you could really look at it and think Rees James could be really useful if he was a fit and firing version of Rees James. You know, we could have a defensive line that sees a flat back three, maybe in possession at least, of Rees James, Levi Colwill, and then maybe tossing Adebayo, maybe Cucurella in there as well with Malo Gusto inverting into midfield. But the reality is, that game is just going to be way too soon for Rees James, in my opinion. And seeing how well we've actually fared without our captain on the pitch, I really do think that we should be looking to ease Rees James back in now. So I've got some bad news for you lot here that we're hoping to see an imminent return for Rees James. But when I look at our fixtures coming up, I'm not sure that Rees James is going to be back anytime too soon. You know, like, you lot tell me, but is Rees James actually registered for the Conference League squad? Because I know obviously some key players like Romeo Lavia and like Cole Palmer haven't been registered for that Conference League squad. And if Rees James isn't, then maybe even in the Conference League we won't be seeing him get any minutes until the re-registration, I think it is, around December time, which means that you could then rule him out for the Panathinaikos game, which is after the Liverpool game. And then after that, you got Newcastle at home, which is only around 10 days from now. Now, when I look at that game, that could see him get his first minutes. But I also look at that game and think, in this sort of hard run of form that we've got, that's one of our more winnable fixtures at the moment. And no discredit to Newcastle. I wouldn't say a fan of Newcastle, but I like Newcastle. Newcastle are good, man. And I feel sorry for Newcastle because I think that they've been treated pretty unfairly by the Premier League since their takeover, especially coming from someone who's experienced the takeover themselves. And I know just how buzzing I was when Roman Abramovich took over Chelsea and we were pretty much handed the reins and allowed to do whatever we wanted. So for a club like Newcastle and their fans especially, I think to young fans that are sort of the age that I was, which was about 12 years old, 11 years old when Roman took over Chelsea, I do feel for him. But I would say that on this season's form, that's one of our more winnable matches. So again, do we want to shuffle the pack so much in that match, and do we want to reintroduce Rees James in that match? Ultimately, maybe we'll see how it's going. If we're winning and we look comfortable by around the 70th minute mark, then maybe I'd give him his first minutes in that one. But again, you got to ask the question, will Enzo Maresca be willing to take the risk? Maybe he won't. So then that moves us on to the next match. And the next match is Newcastle away. Now, let's remember the away trip to Newcastle last season, where I know it doesn't happen often, but Rees James was run ragged a little bit in that match by Anthony Gordon, and then he managed to get himself sent off. So maybe we just avoid the chance of lightning striking twice and we rest him for that match. And that means that we would finally get the chance to see Rees James in a much easier and obviously much more winnable routine match, which is away at Old Trafford against Man United. So hopefully we see him get his first minutes there. And that's on the 3rd of November. So yeah, that for me means that despite seeing Rees James back in training now and despite him training with the full team, it could still be the best part of a month until we even see him back on the pitch. And I'm honestly not adverse to that. I'm not averse to that at all. Like, would you not rather hold out an extra 3 weeks to see Rees James when we've been without him for 3 months or anything like that, rather than seeing him come back in a little bit too early like we've seen in the past and just suffer another injury setback? Because as much as I hate to state the fact that, unlike the past, right, we really do cope quite well without Rees James now. And that doesn't mean that I don't think if Rees James is back to his best, he won't be a crucial player for us. He won't be a brilliant player for us and a player that can be a difference maker for us. But at this moment in time, I don't want to say if it's not broke, don't fix it, but things are going all right. And the absence of Rees James isn't as crippling as it once was for Chelsea Football Club, is it? So personally, I do think we kind of need to be a little bit cruel to be kind in this situation and not rush Rees James back, because as much as I would like to see him under the bright lights at Stamford Bridge, what I don't want to do is be doing the whole 2 steps forward to 1 step back with Rees James. But I don't know, what would you lot do? What I would want to know is, where do you lot see him playing? Because obviously the formation and the style of play has changed since Rees James last got Premier League minutes for Chelsea Football Club. So would you see Rees James as one of the inverting fullbacks and see him in there in the midfield next to maybe a Caicedo and an Enzo, much like we've seen Malo Gusto do and Cucurella do at times this season? Or would you see him as a flat back 3, which is how I would see it? Because when I look at that, and I look at what the demands will be on the body for Rees James, I do look at the option of having him in there in that back 3 and think that maybe physically that's going to suit his reintroduction into this first team better, because the amount of running that Malo Gusto and Cucurella do when they're doing that inverted role, you know, say for example, We have a shot on goal. The keeper catches it, and it comes off the back of a little bit of pressure on the edge of the box. Cucurella is sprinting back. Malo Gusto is sprinting back on the turn, getting back into defence really, really quickly. And despite in pre-season us seeing Rees James do that in the Wrexham game, and it kind of looked all right for him, we didn't have the sort of pressure that a Premier League side would be able to put on us in that game. And when we saw it in the next game, which I believe was Celtic, the game we did shit in, it didn't suit Rees James, and he was sort of run ragged doing that. So I think joining up with Fofana and Levi Colwell in that back three will suit him really well. Have Cucurella in the midfield, Malo Gusto if not. I think that that's the best way of doing it. But I do want to know your opinion on reintegrating Rees James back into the team. Now, I want to finish off on this. And I know a lot of the watchers are out here aren't English or aren't England national team fans. Big up all the watchers I've got from all over the world. I do love you all. But I have to speak about a man who's very, very close to my heart. And that is Tommy Tuchel, because Tommy Tuchel has now been appointed the new England national team manager. And do you know what, right? You have to beg the question, because Tommy Tuchel's not even English. He's German. And I could not give a fuck. I'm well happy to see Tommy Tuchel as England team manager. It means we're finally going to win something, doesn't it? I mean, look at Tommy Tuchel, right? The man's a legend, the man's a winner, and he might not be English, but at least he's proper Chelsea, isn't he? And when you look at him in cup competitions, his record's phenomenal, man. He's been in 14 finals as a manager. He's won more than he's lost. His teams have scored more than they've conceded. Not only that, it's the route to get into the finals, right? He managed 7 semi-finals at Chelsea Football Club, Tommy Tuchel. How many do you think he progressed through out of those 7? Write it in the comments. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 7. I didn't miss out 6, I'm saying 7. He progressed to 7 of the finals as Chelsea Football Club manager, you know. 3 finals in 2 years at Borussia Dortmund, 6 finals in 2 years at PSG, 5 finals in less than 2 years at Chelsea Football Club. The man is magic, and the man is going to drive the England national team to every single tournament we play in. I believe. Nah, joking. But he'll win one. He'll win one. I mean, look at the Chelsea Champions League final against Manchester City, right? I think most people would agree, despite us sort of going over the top sometimes on this England golden generation and whatnot and saying, you know, we should be beating everyone, but I've always said that there are better national teams than us. You'd imagine that France are a better national team than us, and maybe off the back of the... sirens going off outside my house. Maybe off the back of the last Euros that Spain are a better national team than us, and Germany are probably going to come again and come good and whatnot. But here's what I would say. You'd also argue that around Tommy Tuchel's time that Manchester City were a better team than us, and he seemed to get the upper hand on them in both semi-finals and finals of the Champions League, where Manchester City were a favourite to win that match. Not only that, he's adaptable. Who remembers club captain Thiago Silva, our best defender at the time, having to come off injured after about half hour in that Champions League semi-final? He subs on Christensen. Do you know what happens? Nothing happens. We're still as sturdy, still as tight in the defence, and Christensen puts in a stellar performance on our way to beating Manchester City. So I am absolutely buzzing about the fact that Tommy Tuchel has come back and is now England team manager. And as much as, listen, I'm very happy with Enzo Maresca, but say, for example, when Pochettino was sacked, as much as I wanted Tommy Tuchel back at Chelsea, I'll settle for having him at England. I'd settle for having him anywhere that's not Man United, because I was shitting myself thinking they were going to get him for a minute. So either way, let me know your thoughts on everything I've covered in today's video. Myself and the big dog, Josh Aveste, will be back in the studio tomorrow. What's today? Wednesday. Tomorrow we'll be back in the studio. We're going to preview the Liverpool match. We're going to give our starting lineup picks, and we're probably just going to talk a load of shit like we normally do. But you lot love it. The hardcore, by the way, I loved it. The comment section last time. You'll like it hardcore. I'm glad you do, because so do I. People, smash a like if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all in the next one.